ABC Radio Darwin.
This week is Mental Health Week, and it's a time to shine a light on what mental health looks like in our community and also what we need to work on. It's an opportunity to open up those conversations in a safe space. Nolene Armstrong is last year's recipient of the Phil Dempster Award at the Mental Health Community Awards. She's also a mental health and peer worker. Nolene, some people might not know what it means to be a peer worker. Could you explain that for me?
Yeah, of course. So a peer worker working in the mental health sector is working from the basis of their lived experience of having a mental illness or from the basis of caring for someone with a mental illness. So peer workers can identify as someone who's had a mental illness or someone who's cared for someone with a mental illness. And, of course, many carers experience depression. They actually experience depression at a rate of 10 times, almost 10 times the rest of the population. So, of course, many carers might be caring for someone with a mental illness and also experience a mental illness themselves.
And how much support is there for peer workers in the top end?
So in the Northern Territory, we've got no established support for peer workers. It's kind of done ad hoc from organisation to organisation, where, if at all, if they're employing a peer worker. But, of course, there are so many benefits to having someone in your team who identifies as a peer worker. For the people using the service, that's being able to connect with someone who's walked in your shoes. It really builds trust and rapport very quickly, knowing that, someone just gets...
Just understands.
Understands things that a person might not even be able to articulate themselves.
Yeah. Now, Nolene, you not only work in the mental health field, but like many carers, as you say, you've got your own lived experience. What's your personal story?
So for many years, probably 20 years, I have an adult sibling who has a severe and complex mental illness, and I live interstate from him now. But for a long time, especially in the early years, that was just so confusing and traumatic, trying to navigate that system when he was so unwell, and really having to learn on the run about this mental health system and then interface with, psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health nurses, and understand what his rights were, what our rights were, and get on the same page to try and work towards his recovery.
How do you cope with that experience and having to deal with that in such an intimate, family setting?
So what was really fortuitous for our family was we came across the Mental Health Care Organisation and just happened to come across them. I think it was during either Mental Health Week or Schizophrenia Awareness Week. And I had no idea that they existed, but that was the first time I found a service who was actually designed to help us understand our experience and what we were going through in trying to support him through the mental health system. And I think that if it hadn't have come at that time, our family was at a point of fracture. Certainly there was a lot of pressure on my parents' marriage. There was a very real possibility that my brother was going to become homeless. He had no income, and there was a lot of conflict within the family, and a lot of it was just a lack of understanding of his illness. So we were able to connect with that organisation to get emotional support as well as psychosocial education and to understand our own feelings and also what he was going through. So it was really timely for us, and I have, through my more recent years working in the sector, seen very similar experiences by other families up here, the relief that comes with connecting with people working in the sector who are actually there to sort of assist you through the journey, and they really understand the position that you're coming from.
Yeah, and you're different, and also the different situations that each family might be in. So then, would that be your advice to people who might be struggling to cope to reach out to those services?
Yeah, certainly. For families especially, I would say search up who your mental health care organisations are in the in Darwin. At the moment, we've got Carers NT and MyFant who are providing those services, and Central and Barclay at Arcs, and I think Anglicare does it in East Arnhem. But, jump online, reach out.
And have
there
a
are
look.
also, national organisations can provide online support as well. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Nolene, I think one of the other barriers to people reaching out for help is obviously the stigma that is attached to mental illness and mental health. It's clear that there's a lot more awareness around mental health than there used to be. We've got things like Mental Health Week, and not long ago we had Suicide Prevention Day, and there's Are You OK Day, starting up that conversation. Do you think we're getting better at talking about these things?
I think yes, getting better.
Do you still think there's a way to go?
Yeah, there's definitely a way to go. There's certainly a way to go. Look, once those conversations are happening, it's so normalising for people to realise that they're not the only person. Just understanding the statistics, like you said, 1 in 5 people in any given year, but also 45% of people over the course of their lifetime will experience a mental illness.
That's huge.
So it should be okay to talk about. It should be okay to acknowledge in the same way we talk about
Physical illnesses
or cancer or those sort of things. So, I mean, the other...
Slowly but surely.
Slowly. The other thing I would say in terms of peer workforce in the Northern Territory, we're the only state or territory that currently doesn't offer vocational education and training. So every other state or territory has a Cert 4 in peer support, and we don't. And I think, we really need to take some steps to catch up there. And having those workers adds so much value to the teams that are supporting our people during crises and, post-crises. So,
yeah, definitely. Well, that leads very nicely into my next question, which was, while we might be getting better at talking about mental health, what does our system actually look like? Is that working?
Well, I think our system is, reflective of investment nationally, which is there's a lot of investment in treatment at crisis phase, and unfortunately that tends to drain resources, so we don't see so much investment in prevention and early intervention. And also, there's so much research around why it's important to invest in prevention and early intervention, but just raising public literacy around mental illness, getting people talking about it like it's an everyday conversation, those investments go a long way to smashing the stigma. And really, when someone's at crisis point, be it an individual or a family, supporting that individual, that stigma, especially the first time, and a lack of understanding is what
can be debilitating.
It's a big barrier to accessing support. So, there's lots we can do to just try and
make it easier for people.
Illness. Yeah.
Now, you were at the Carers NT lunch earlier today. What kind of conversations were people having there?
Well, we were actually talking about the role of carers and how, as carers, we really have to ground ourselves and make ourselves heard, because what isn't acknowledged, I think, by services is that we're a hidden workforce, and, second to the person with the illness, we know them better than anyone else, and we certainly have that long-term relationship and have all the history to that person. We know them when they're well, we know them when they're not well. So it's super important to collaborate with the carers, and, knowing some of the statistics, sometimes I feel quite frustrated, because I know there's fairly significant investment in mental health services, but what many people don't understand is the economic value of unpaid care and support by mental health carers is $13.2 billion a year.
Wow, that's enormous as well. The stats are just shocking, aren't they?
Yeah, so they're an enormous stakeholder, and, you should never underestimate how much influence they can have, and really a well-informed carer that's collaborated with by a service, that all working toward the same outcomes to support a person, that's the ultimate
that's the ultimate
way
goal.
Want to work. Yeah, that's right.
Nolene, it was wonderful to speak to you this afternoon. Thanks so much for your time.
No problems. Thanks, Georgia.
ABC Radio Darwin.
Okay.